Today I'm sharing with you. As the saying goes, raising children prevents loneliness, and taking precautions early prevents disasters. When elderly parents receive care from their children, their final days become a bit more dignified. However, the elderly should realize clearly that moving in with their children means living with their son-in-law and daughter-in-law. Daily conflicts are inevitable. If your children are busy with work or if the role of the head of the family is handed over to your son-in-law and daughter-in-law, you have to be even more cautious. Family ties are good in theory, but reality often falls short. Some also tell us that to ensure filial piety from your son-in-law and daughter-in-law, you must consider the law of karma: the more you give, the more you receive. However, many find that while their sacrifices may move them, they may not move others. Ingratitude is not uncommon. If you want to spend your old age peacefully, ultimately, you have to find a way to protect yourself and avoid relying excessively on trust. A son-in-law is half from his own family and half from his wife's family. The ancient saying that a son-in-law is half a son has been around for a long time. Of course, we can understand this. After all, besides caring for their in-laws, son-in-laws also have to take care of their own parents. And according to tradition, son-in-laws mainly take care of their own parents. If a son-in-law lacks the ability to support a large family, solving the problem of caring for his in-laws in their old age becomes difficult. Even more frightening is the feudal notion that once a woman is married, she's like water poured out, meaning that when elderly parents go to live with their son-in-law, they are often marginalized and made to feel uncomfortable. Only as a last resort do elderly parents go to live with their son-in-law, but even then, the son-in-law becomes pragmatic. After receiving the parents' property, he arranges for their care, revealing his true intentions. There is an example in Jinki about an elderly man named Gaoguang from Wuzhou Prefecture in Zhejiang Province. When he was young, he worked in the government office and saved a few hundred taels of silver. His wife passed away, leaving him with 3 daughters. Several sons-in-law learned about Gaoguang's savings and actively invited him to live with them, offering him good food and drink. The eldest son-in-law treated him to a few meals, the second son-in-law expressed some dissatisfaction, and the third son-in-law showed some temper. It was clear to everyone that wherever Gaoguang lived, his money would go there. Gaoguang, feeling that he could rely on his sons-in-law, generously divided his savings among them. Sadly, Gaoguang soon found himself penniless and was quickly sent back to his hometown. This story illustrates that when sons-in-law help with eldercare, it's often motivated by money. Sons-in-law have to bear the responsibility of providing for their families, so naturally, money matters greatly to them. It's understandable from the perspective of the parents, but they also need to be cautious. The relationship between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law is notoriously difficult. It's half matchmaking and half neighbors. There's a rural saying, if you know how to treat your daughter-in-law well, you're not likely to treat your daughter well. It's quite obvious, so it's best to actively build a good relationship with your daughter-in-law and limit interactions with married-out daughters. Daughters marry out, daughters-in-law come in. Understanding this, elderly parents can have a clear understanding. But the relationship between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law is very difficult to handle. The closer they get, the more conflicts arise. The differing values, habits, roles, and methods of raising grandchildren between 2 generations can turn trivial matters into heated arguments. In the relationship between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, there's always a son standing in between. If the son is the type who lets his wife control everything, then the parents also have to obey the daughter-in-law. When the relationship between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law sours, the son is caught in the middle and requires tremendous patience. Otherwise, if the son doesn't intervene and sides with his wife, it's as if his parents are left without any support. Helping parents might make the daughter-in-law feel neglected, thinking that her husband doesn't love her enough. Joining forces against outsiders, helping the daughter-in-law might make the parents feel that their son has forgotten them. So, If you want to handle the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law well, you need both to change your mindset and to change your actions accordingly. This reminds me of a mother-in-law with high emotional intelligence. Her mindset and approach could educate many people. Mrs. Liu, 54 years old, has a son who's been married for 5 years. She adores her son deeply. Since his marriage, the couple moved out. Although Mrs. Liu misses her son, her rationality overcomes her attachment. What truly impresses me is how rarely she stays at her son's place. She might visit occasionally to chat with her son and daughter-in-law, but that's it. People around her often ask, if you miss your son so much, why don't you move in with him? Mrs. Liu responds sternly, if I move in, it'd be more trouble for him. You don't know, if a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law live together for a long time, conflicts easily arise. What if I have conflicts with my daughter-in-law? That would upset my son even more. Everyone admires her rationality. Mrs. Liu gets along extremely well with her daughter-in-law. Since her daughter-in-law arrived, Mrs. Liu has treated her like her own daughter. She often calls her daughter-in-law to share delicious dishes she's made and invites her over for dinner after work. Her daughter-in-law is also thoughtful and affectionate towards Mrs. Liu. Their relationship is admired by those around them. When Mrs. Liu's son got married, people would often ask when they would have children. Mrs. Liu always replied, that's their business, I won't interfere. If they do have children, I'll help raise them. People joked, you should help your daughter-in-law take care of the children. Only then will she take care of you in old age. Mrs. Liu waved her hand and said, I help take care of the children not because I expect my son to support me in old age. My daughter-in-law doesn't have that obligation. I do it to maintain family harmony. Mrs. Liu believes that actions without ulterior motives are purer and more likely to be genuinely accepted by the other party. She sincerely thanks and always remembers. If helping your daughter-in-law with childcare is seen as an investment for future care, it becomes utilitarian. Even if the daughter-in-law appreciates it, she may perceive it as an ulterior motive. When the daughter-in-law feels there's an agenda behind your actions, she'll weigh the pros and cons, turning the relationship into an exchange. This underlying issue persists in mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships. Mrs. Liu's high emotional intelligence shines in her relationship with her daughter-in-law. She considers every aspect, making their interactions comfortable. Their relationship deepens naturally, without the usual tension between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. Mrs. Liu once said, even in good mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships, one must learn to keep a distance in old age. This reserve means ultimately relying on oneself, avoiding burdening others. In Chenyan, there's a saying about the ideal life, the utopia of emotions. It emphasizes self-reliance, which holds true throughout life. Elderly people rely on themselves to secure a peaceful retirement. They manage finances to have something for emergencies, keeping a portion for themselves. It's best to have retirement savings. Even if they give their savings to their children, they can still afford their living expenses. Mrs. Liu has accumulated a considerable sum after retiring, preparing for unforeseen needs. She handles what she can by herself and only seeks her son's help when necessary. He understands situations well, respecting his mother and being filial. Their relationship is harmonious, a model for others. I hope Mrs. Liu's story can help some people and change others, teaching them how to manage mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationships, leading to happy families and lives. Regardless of where the elderly spend their retirement, they should keep a way out. As in the saying, Jews' family instructions, which suggests that when marrying off daughters, one should pay more attention to the son-in-law, and one should not forget the integrity of the in-law's family. From the day when children start seeking partners, they should consider their own aging and secure their retirement funds. If parents demand exorbitant dowries or impose high expectations on daughters-in-law, it plants seeds of trouble for their own old age. Whether children are filial or not adheres to the law of causality. Wanting filial piety from descendants requires nurturing them first. It's a reciprocal process. Pray that children have conscience and filial piety. Treat others as they would want to be treated. What will life be like after 50? People at 50 should assess who remains by their side. Firstly, a lifelong companion. As the saying goes, a young couple keeps each other company till old age, highlighting the happiness of having a spouse by your side in old age. Some may not realize the importance of their partner in their prime years, thinking that they can go to a nursing home in old age as long as they earn enough money. Little do they realize that a nursing home won't offer constant companionship. They only realize how much they long for a lifelong companion when it's too late. Secondly, having both parents still alive is comforting. There's nothing more heartening at 50 than having parents who are still healthy. There's a pain that can't be alleviated. Once awakened, it's too late. As children, we must remember, parents don't wish for material indulgence. They crave our time, frequent visits, a pair of slippers neatly placed at the door, a towel handed over when we're sweating, a little assistance crossing the road, and a warm birthday wish. Thirdly, having children who are independent and ambitious is essential. Filial piety takes precedence over all virtues. This shows that children must learn to be independent and ambitious. Nowadays, many families have only one child, and the child naturally becomes the center of attention. Parents often spoil them, leading the child to take their parents' love for granted without considering how to repay it. Children who lack filial piety will make their parents' old age bitter. Therefore, we must cultivate children who understand filial piety and are driven to succeed. This is not only responsible for the children's future, but also for ourselves after 50. Many people today rely on their parents even as adults, causing their parents to work hard for them. Yet, the children not only fail to appreciate their parents, but also criticize them for not helping enough. Such situations arise because parents exhaust themselves to support their children, only to find out later that their children don't understand gratitude. It's because they failed to teach their children how to be filial. People living like this lead a bitter life. So, when you reach 50, having independent and ambitious children is the greatest happiness. This kind of happiness brings peace and fulfillment. Fourthly, having a few friends with similar interests is like aged wine. The longer the friendship, the richer it becomes. Friends who share your interests are those you've experienced life's ups and downs with, whether they were classmates, comrades, or colleagues. Their relationship may be closer than that with relatives because they understand you the best. At 50, if you have such friends around, it's a blessing. Life may bring many comings and goings, but few friendships endure. Genuine friendship, cultivated through shared experiences, doesn't fade with time. Having common interests and understanding each other means you don't need many friends. 3 to 5 true friends are enough. Sincere treatment, without comparison or envy, and mutual blessings are key. So, at 50, having these 4 types of companions, living harmoniously and happily together, ensures a blessed later life. Today's sharing is about this. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this channel, don't forget to subscribe and share. Here, you'll never be alone.